What is going on, guys, and welcome to a brand new video. Today we're going to be breaking down why INVOKER has a 47.43% win rate. This hero has always been my favorite hero in Dota 2, and it pains me to say how bad he is right now in the current meta. Obviously, there's always going to be a game where you're playing with a Faceless Void and you're going to get a ton of value from going the Aghanim Scepter build, and Cataclysm is always going to be one of these tools that can definitely turn the game on a swindle, or you can just Cataclysm and get absolutely nothing done. It's one of those spells that can either completely change the team fight or absolutely do nothing. But in general, INVOKER has been such a volatile hero ever since they made him into a universal hero. I expected this hero to be a lot stronger, and they did a whole bunch of changes to him. Honestly, I just don't think INVOKER is that strong. There comes a point in the game where he just doesn't feel like he does enough. Sure, it's just one hero and you can always combo off your supports or your carry and have easy setup for sunstrikes. You can always do things like that and just get enough value, but I definitely feel like INVOKER players should start rotating and start playing INVOKER support. I think INVOKER support is extremely underrated, and I've said that in a lot of different patches where INVOKER has been really strong, especially when you're playing items like Vessel. You can play INVOKER support so much better. You can still build items like Force Staff, you can get Yule Scepters to set up for Sunstrikes or Ice Walls. You can do a lot of things with this hero from the position 4. I don't think he's a good position 5 whatsoever just because of the XP, and you want to give your carry some XP. I think he needs to be played in the position 4. You can still play mid viable, but you have to be an INVOKER specialist. I think if you're a mediocre INVOKER player, you're not going to be doing well enough in the mid lane. I think you have to be kind of like a specialist right now, because even the pros are definitely deviating away from this hero just because it just doesn't do enough. And Exort INVOKER takes a long time to get online. Sure, you can snipe for sunstrikes, and if you're playing with a team that has enough stuns or easy setups like Duel or Axe Call, then yes, it can be a lot more viable because you're going to get a lot more kills around the map and stay in your lane. But most of the time when you're playing against heroes like Viper, Huskar, these types of lane dominators, you're not going to be having a good time because they're just going to kick you out of lane. And Exort INVOKER needs those levels to be able to farm in the jungle, because if you're playing Quaswex INVOKER and you are in the jungle, you're not going to be doing pretty much anything because you don't have access to Forge Spirits, you don't have access to Meteor. It's just not going to be good for you. So definitely keep in mind what type of style you guys want to play. Most people like to play Quaswex INVOKER just because it gives you a lot more utility. You're able to roam around the map, you're able to be a lot more faster and just do overall more things early on. But obviously Exort INVOKER is what reigns supreme in the late game. It's what you should be playing, and I think overall the best thing you can do in the lane is to play Exort INVOKER. Even if it's a tough lane, you're going to have a much better outcome because you can actually go to the jungle. You have access to Sunstrike, which is always going to be really strong, and it's just the better option right now. I think Quaswex INVOKER is just a little bit too weak right now in my opinion. You can still play Exort INVOKER and run with a Vessel. It's definitely very okay. You can also play him right click with items like Mage Slayer. You can get Witchblade, which eventually goes into Parasma, which is an insane item right now in the current meta. So I definitely recommend those items on INVOKER. You can always go for the Midas as your first item. If you're going to be playing Exort INVOKER, you need that Midas, just because if you do decide to team fight on the Exort INVOKER, you're not going to be falling behind as hard when you have that Midas, and you can always go back to the mid lane and get your farm. That is also another important key feature of INVOKER that you guys need to keep in mind. Once you guys are done with the team fight, whether you win or lose, you need to go back into your lane and keep farming, and then also rotate to the jungle and keep farming that with your Alacrity and your Forge Spirits. You need to be optimizing yourself as much as possible. It's not just Meteor. Meteor is a really big cooldown, so if you're just depending on that, you're not going to be doing too hot. I definitely recommend you guys to stack for yourselves and get a really big stack, and once you have enough levels in Meteor, you can easily clean up the stack with Alacrity and Meteor. It's a very easy way to get your net worth higher, and I always recommend, if you're going to be playing Exort INVOKER, be playing it with some type of setup, whether it be Chrono, Arena, Axe Call, or Legion Commander Duel. You need to be playing it with some type of setup, otherwise you're just going to be missing a lot of Sunstrikes. And even if you're good at landing Sunstrikes, it's always very difficult to predict where the player is going to be. But if they are stunned or something like that, it's definitely easy for you to get the Sunstrike kill. It's going to boost your net worth quite a bit. Another item that I truly recommend that INVOKER cannot play without, in my opinion, is Boots of Travels. This hero is so strong at split pushing because of Forge Spirits. You can easily be a nuisance around the map, and even when you're losing games, it's when it's most important to have this. I think if you're playing from ahead, you definitely don't need to rush the travels, but I think if you're playing from behind, you definitely need to buy the boots travels. It's definitely a must because it helps you join up with your team. It helps you play away from your team as well because you're able to split push and you're able to join them very, very quickly. It's always going to be extremely important for you to have that extra mobility. You push out the waves in a much safer way as you do have Ghost Walk. You have Tornado in case they have Dust. That way you can kind of bridge the gap, and then you have Ice Wall to slow them just in case they are just a lot faster than you. You have so many tools at your disposal, you should definitely use them. Now I'm going to be breaking down some of the bad matchups and the good matchups for Invoker. Some of the bad matchups are Pangolier, Templar Assassin, Broodmother, Lycan, and Puck. So these heroes that can easily get on top of you, that are always going to be carrying Dust. If you're a good player, you're always going to carry Dust against an Invoker. These types of heroes that either have illusions or have a lot of creeps, or heroes that like to build Helm of the Overlord or Helm of the Dominator, those heroes are typically quite strong against Invoker, as you typically don't do enough damage to clear through those creeps unless you're completely snowballing and you're out leveling them pretty hard. But typically he's not good against summons heroes and typically not good against illusion heroes because Meteor is just such a long cooldown, it's not reliable enough. And heroes like Pango can just easily get on top of you, and they do heavy amounts of physical damage, and Pango is just a natural diffusal buyer. You should definitely keep that in mind. You should always try and buy a wand. It's always going to be good for sustaining that mana pool, as if you're being really active, your mana pool is going to hinder you and you might have to buy some mangoes or some clarity. Some of the heroes Invoker is good up against are heroes like Medusa, Arc Warden, Viper, Doom, and Death Prophet. These heroes you have a decent advantage up against, but if you're playing the mid lane against a Death Prophet, I definitely don't think that matchup is very favorable for you. I think in the game overall, you can do very well against her. I just think in the lane, it's not a very good matchup, and I wouldn't count on winning that lane just because Spirit Siphon is so strong. She has a really strong silence and quite a strong laner, which Invoker typically isn't a very strong laner. When you see heroes like Medusa, you always have to play Quas Wex, especially early on. You're going to be able to get very easy kills onto that hero. Much better experience for you to play Quas Wex against that hero. Viper is just strong. I definitely recommend you guys to play Exort Invoker into Viper just because you're going to have that extra damage of Forge Spirits, and then with Cold Snap you might be able to get a kill when you add some Alacrity to it, or maybe the odd Sunstrike. You might be able to do it, but if you're playing Quas Wex into Viper, you can burn his mana pool. He's still going to do a lot of damage to you, and he can easily just get a bottle or get some mangoes, and he's just going to be able to kick you out of lane quite easily. So don't play it into lane dominators like that without a strategy. I definitely think you should look at your lane and decide whether you are going to play Quas Wex or you're going to play Exort Invoker. Most of the time, I definitely think Exort Invoker is going to be your best bet as long as you know how to play the style. You should be picking Invoker when there is some setup for you to land Sunstrikes. That is the primary reason. Another reason to pick Invoker is if your team is lacking some setup or there needs to be some mana burn component involved or some split push, you can pick Invoker. He's always going to be quite strong. You have the EMP, which is nice. You have Tornado for a good dispel, and you also have the disarm with Deafening Blast. You have a bunch of tools at your disposal. It's never going to feel terrible to play Invoker, but when you're playing from behind, it can definitely feel quite bad. So definitely stay in lane. Ignore what some people are telling you to do. A lot of players will typically tell you to rotate early on Exort Invoker. I definitely don't think you have to do that. And if your team doesn't understand that, you definitely need to explain it in a non-toxic manner. You should explain to them you are playing Exort Invoker and your timings are a lot more important, because if your Midas is delayed, then your Boots Travels will be delayed, your Scepter will be delayed, your Mage Slayer, your Witchblade, or whatever you decide to go for. Those timings are extremely important on this hero, so definitely keep that in mind before rotating. Try and help the side lanes with Sunstrikes. Coordinate with your team with the stuns for you to be able to get those Sunstrike kills, or just create a lot of pressure on the enemy safe laner or off laner. You're going to be able to do a lot of things on the side lanes just with Sunstrike. Do not misuse Sunstrike, but if you bring yourself a Clarity, you can spam more Sunstrikes and just create that extra pressure or that extra instability in the side lanes. It's always going to be nice. Let me know in the comment section below if you guys are Invoker players. This is my favorite hero by far. I am currently a Master Tier Invoker player, and this will always be my favorite hero in Dota 2. And it just saddens me to see this hero in such a position where he just doesn't feel as strong as he used to be. I definitely think that Meteor should get a little bit more of a buff, and maybe Sunstrike should get buffed slightly. Not a whole ton, because then it becomes extremely overpowered. But these abilities need to be strengthened a little bit. I think he just needs little tweaks here and there. I don't think he needs a whole lot to be really strong again, but they should definitely tweak him and give him a little more stats, and just overall more damage would be nice on this hero. If you guys enjoyed, leave a like and leave a comment down below if Invoker is your favorite hero. I will see you guys in the next one. Thank you so much for watching.